Good morning, everyone. Today, the last day of this week, and we're learning a speech given by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in the year 1950. Just one second. 1959. Huh? And it's talking about the difference between the Jews and the non-Jews, which is especially stressed by the holiday of Purim. The Jewish people have this holiday called Purim. And the holiday called Purim, it occurred right before the Second Temple was built, about something like 2,500 years ago. And 2,400 years ago. And it's a holiday when the whole world stood up against the Jews. Everybody wanted to kill the Jews. The whole world was convinced to kill the Jews. Well, how do I know that? Because it says that the king Achashverosh, he ruled over the whole world. It says Mihodu and Kush. Some people say that Hodu and Kush were right next to each other. He ruled the whole circumference of the world, everywhere. And he made this decree because one of his advisors suggested to him, and he took up the suggestion to kill all the Jews in one day. And everything turned around. Suddenly, Achashverosh changed his mind, and he said, no, exactly the opposite. Not only not kill the Jews, but also give the Jews what they want. And that was also, that facilitated the building of the Second Temple. Also, I'll give them what they want. And then it says a statement like this, that all the Jews, they had Ora v'simcha v'sasam v'yatkor. This is the Jews had, we say this also when we say the Havdalah, it's a prayer called Havdalah, that we say every, the end of every Shabbat, after every Shabbat. This is a prayer that we make, a little ceremony that we make with a cup of wine, and we make what's called Havdalah, and we say that the Jews were Ora v'simcha v'sasam v'yatkor. The Jews were happy, and they had four different types of happiness. This is Ora, light, and Sason, joy, Ora v'simcha, and joy, v'sason, and happiness, v'yakar, and glory. That's what the Jews had. And it says in the Midrash that this refers to four things that they wanted to make a decree on. Tried to stop four things. Ora is the Torah. Simcha is holidays, Jewish holidays. Sason, it says, is the circumcision. And Yakar is the tefillin. So this refers to the four things. And the Rebbe wants to say that these four things especially are uniquely Jewish. Uniquely Jewish. That the Torah of the Jewish people is not like the Bible of any other nation. The holidays of the Jewish people are not like the holidays of any other nation. The circumcision, other nations also do circumcision. America is not like any other nation. And the commandments the Jewish people do, tefillin, are not like any other nation, and we'll see why. And that's even though all those four things are found by the other nations, the other religions, but the way the Jews do it are totally different, and that's what differentiates between Jews and non-Jews. Let's go. In the Megillah, it tells about the results. Let's make this a little bit bigger over here. In the Megillah, it tells about the results. In the Megillah, it tells about the results about the miracle which is in Purim. The Megillah, by the way, is a small book. It's a chapter of the Torah. It's a small chapter of the Torah, and we read it twice in the holiday of Purim. Once in the nighttime, once in the daytime. And first of all, it's very unique because it doesn't have God's name in it. It's the only book in the Torah that does not mention the name of God. Right? And there's other things also because it doesn't really talk about any miracles. Everything could be explained in a sort of a natural way, but when you step back, you realize the whole thing was totally above nature. So let's see. In the Megillah, it tells about the results of what happened from Purim. Zoktes, it says in the Megillah, is in Etlich Kurzer words, just a few short words. La Yehudim, to the Jews, Hayata Ora, they had light, Simcha, joy, Sason, happiness, Vikar, and glory. Zaktartem, the Gemara, the Talmud says, the Talmud says, Ora, that refers to Torah. Simcha, this refers to the holidays. Sason, this refers to the circumcision. And Yakar, that's tefillin. The fear, Zach, these four things, Zayin and Osus, these are signs. These are signs, welche weisen auf dem Verbund, which show off which demonstrate the connection between the Jewish people and God. And these four things, Torah, holidays, circumcision, and tefillin, that shows the unique connection between the Jews with God. When Haman, a Russian Haman, the evil Haman, had Gozer Gavan, he wanted to that Yidden, that the Jews, Zelenit Mekayim Zayin, they should not do these four things. That was his motivation for wanting to kill all the Jews. Val, because hat nit gewollt, he did not want, as unit gekent, and he couldn't bear, was the Yidden, that the Jewish people, they how do you say, they mark themselves off in a way from all the other nations. Durch their Verbund, with their connection to God. So the Jews are connected to God in an unusual way. Like we said, they're the chosen people. The Jews are the sons of God, right? Jews are the wife of God. It says the Jews got married to God, the whole book of the Song of the Songs. So this is a special connection the Jews have to God intrinsically, whether they manifest this or not, whether they do the commandments or don't, or even if they don't know they're Jewish. A Jewish person has these connections, but these four things advertise it, and he couldn't take that. Now let's see how the Jews really are different, essentially, from everybody else. Which, by the way, the holiday of Purim, we remember we learned this last week. There was the worst decree ever on the history of the Jewish people to kill all of the Jewish people in one day, and the whole world agreed with it. And what was the reason? Because the Jews are different. That's what it said. The Jews are different. That's what Haman said to Achashverosh, and Achashverosh said, that's okay. To hate somebody because he's different from you. Not because he's better or he's worse, he's dangerous, he's different. That's enough of a reason to hate. Like in school, they had bullying and things like that, right? A kid is a little bit buck teeth, or he looks a little short or tall or fat or skinny or whatever it is. So everybody, he's different, right? But not the whole school. The whole school they hates him. Here, the Jews, the whole world hated them. It's something like now. Why did they hate all the Jews? What did they hate? What did they do? They did something? What did they make up something, right? Make up something. It's durch zer verbund, with the connection with God. When it was the miracle from Purim, when men is putter, and we were finally, how do you say, done, freed from Haman, Mitzayin Gezeres, and his decrees, is then for the Megillah says to us that the Yehudim, that the Jews finally had light, which is Torah, Simcha, which is the holidays, Sasan, which is Bris Milah, circumcision, and Yakar and Tefillin. That is the special happiness of the Jews. Why? That's what we're going to talk about. Let's go. B'shaz men. An oz, when you make some sort of a sign, when zeichenen in a zach, and you separate, you signify, you mark off a certain thing, so uptailing to divide it from all of other things, as darv sign, that sign, you make has to be nor in their zach. It has to be that it's only in that thing. Unit in their tzveiter, not in the other. Oib der os, if that sign, zol zayin, in a beta or in both, is as doch nit kein zeichen, is no difference between from rechteken ois, from proper discernment, as one thing should be different from the other. Or stealing from der zach, from the tzveiter. Let's say, for instance, you have two identical cars, and you want the cars to be different from one another. So on one of them, you make the number 1, and the other one, you make the number 2. On one of them, you put your name on the side, and the other one, you put somebody else's name on the side. That shows that the two identical cars are not identical. You can easily tell the difference between them. Now, if you want to show the difference between the Jewish people and the not Jewish people, so there should be something discernibly different between the Jews and everyone else. So the Jews picked these 4 things that are not present by any of the other nations. Right? Wrong. All of these 4 things are found by the other nations as well. Does Zelba the same thing as B'Shas Men read it, Vegan, when you're talking about a sign which is connected, which is dividing the Jewish people from all the other nations, achiluk yesodi va'atzmi, an essential difference. I mean, isn't it really amazing that there's this thing called hating Jews, Jew hatred? They tried to sort of hide it over. It's just not really hatred. It's just called being opposed to it. It's not really Jews. It's called Semites. It's not so. They hate Jews. Why do they hate Jews? We've talked about this before. Let's say a person, he hates the blacks. Why he hates the blacks? Because he doesn't like the color black. He doesn't like the color. You can easily see this person is black and I hate him. Why do I hate him? Because he's different from me. He's black. I hate him. Right? They hate Orientals. They hate this because they're different. They're different. The people hate Mexicans. They're from a different country. I hate everybody from Mexico. Look, he speaks with an accent. I don't hate everyone with that. Okay, this is different, various types of sickness, but at least it's sickness that's based on something. And here people hate the Jews. The Jews don't look different. They don't have a different color. Their eyes aren't slanted. They don't speak with an accent. They don't come from a different country. They were born in America. They've been living there for 200 years, who knows how long. And they look like everybody. They act like everybody. And some of them become like successful movie stars. Everybody claps for their music and for the this and that. And they're just like everybody else. All of a sudden, it says he's a Jew. Oy! Everybody hates him. Why? And why such a deep, how do you say, reaction, hatred? Ooh, that comes from the essence of the thing. Essence of the thing. Let's say a person, a Catholic doesn't want to get married to a Protestant. They don't get along, right? It's a different religion. We've done this, but they don't hate them. Catholics don't hate Protestants. I mean, there were certain places where there was a power struggle, but no, right? People hate them because of that. Right? You don't want to get married to a person from a lower class, a person that's not Italian, a person that's not a different, right? But the Jewish people, but they don't hate them. They don't hate Italians. They don't hate them because they just don't want them in the family. It's not my family. But the Jewish people, they hate them. It's not just they don't want to get married to them or do business. They do business with them. They even get married with them, but they hate them. Why all of a sudden they hate Jews? What do they hate them for? It's so therefore the reason can be shown by these 4 things, but these 4 things are not good signs. They don't express the difference between the Jewish people. It has to be a sign that stresses something very essence differently. Darf doch das sein durch so eine Sachen, and it has to be such things which do not exist by any other nation, only by the Jews. But in actual, what do we see? That all these 4 things, Torah, holidays, the Bibles, the holidays, circumcision, and even the tefillin, they are things which are found by other nations as well. Torah, for instance, Torah. Also the non-Jews, the Gentiles, an erkennen und lernen, they also recognize and they have in their books. They have intellect, first of all. Non-Jews they're smart, they're intellectual. There's no difference between the IQ of Jews and other people, right? And they have books. And they can learn even more. They can learn our Torah. Like it says, the Torah is wisdom in the eyes of the non-Jews. As also by the non-Jews, they realize the Torah is a very wise book, but they learn it. They learn the Torah. That's in addition to the fact that they have their own Bibles. Every religion has its own Bibles. They have the Vedas and they have the whatever's the and the Quran. Yom Tov, Oich Goyim, also non-Jews, they have their holidays from the Independence Day and etc. Also circumcision. The non-Jews, a lot of them in America was very common. It is common that the non-Jews, they also do circumcision. Why? For health purposes. They say it's more healthy, that there's a much less the percentage of people get whatever diseases there are, which can be attached to the foreskin. When a zoy is also relevant to tefillin. True, the non-Jews don't put on tefillin, but punkt v'yidin, just like Jews put on tefillin to show their connection to God, is also by putting on tefillin, all the nations, it says, they can see that the name of God is called on us. As also the non-Jews, they have their signs. They have a turban, they have a cross they wear something, uzich for shidden folka. They also have some sort of a sign which divides them off from everybody else. The Havdil to Trugan, they put a sign on themselves as some sort of a charm, a sign, whatever, in order that you should know that this person comes from their things. The Hindus, they have a little dot in the middle of their head, and the who knows, the Mexicans wear a sombrero, and these guys put on the Scottish put on a kilt. Other nations also have it, right? They also have their signs or the things that they is doch need verstanden. So it's not understandable. Why in the world would God make a sign like this? When God wanted to make some sort of a sign which separates the Jews between the other nations, as he should have chosen such things or commandments or which by the Umas Olam, which the non-Jews, they don't have at all. They don't have any connection whatsoever. Write a Hebrew letter on everybody's forehead. That'd be nice. A Hebrew letter on everybody's forehead so you can see this is a Jew. Why do you have to put a box on your head? The non-Jews also have the things that they wear, right? Not these four things that they had before, which is somewhat similar to the non-Jews. They are clear in their form. The answer is like this. When do you really have to have a sign to separate between two things? Davka, B'shas, the two things, they have some sort of a connection between them. What do we say? If you have two cars and they're identically the same, so you have to remember which cars, so you make a sign between them. Make a sign of them. Then you have to have a sign and a far under and something which divides between them. But if there's not, you have a horse and your next neighbor is a car, so you don't have to make a sign to see which one is yours or which one is. You can see they're different. You don't have to have any sign to show which is. Thus says this means is the signs which come to divide between the Jewish people and the non-Jews. It's not just to automatically signify, to show that the Jews, I'm sorry, nit oif tzutelen, the idisha neshama, not the Jewish soul from the souls of the non-Jews. We said before, the Jewish people, God chose them. The Jewish people are the chosen people. They're not chosen because they have a different, and the Tanya explains that the Jewish people, they have what's called two souls. In addition to an additional soul, the non-Jews, they have one soul. Their soul, like every human being, it's not unlike an animal. Their soul also contains wisdom and conscience, right? So the non-Jew has a sense of what's right, a sense of what's wrong, has a sense of, but the Jew, and it'll go according to that sense. But every Jew has what's called a godly soul, and he senses that Jew is connected to the Torah. The Torah becomes his conscience, and intrinsically, essentially. So that's something that the non-Jews don't have. The non-Jews, by a Jew, his soul tells him to do the commandments. There are commandments. The soul tells him there are commandments. Non-Jews don't have that. So that you don't have to have a sign for that. You don't have the signs in it. Because the soul of a Jew is different. There's no connection between the soul of a Jew that tells him automatically to do what God wants. You don't need a sign for that. That's totally different. The osos, these signs, therefore, what do they come to show? To separate the body of the Jewish people with the bodies of the non-Jews. Oiserlich externally is doch the guf, and the Jewish body is exactly similar to a non-Jew. You can make a heart transplant, you can get married, you have children. God forbid. The Jewish body is similar to a not Jewish body. Val, because oich der guf, because the physical body of a Jew is physical. Und in addition, and externally, zet sich nicht, it doesn't, you can't see any difference between a Yiddish group, between a Jewish body and a non-Jewish body. Right? A Jew is willing to give his life for Judaism, for God, purely for God. He's willing to lose everything, and willing to lose heaven. That was like Abraham, willing to lose everything he has because he's a Jew. A non-Jew doesn't have that. A non-Jew, there has to be some sort of a reason, he has to be convinced he's going to go to heaven. Which is not a Jew has what's called total self-sacrifice. He's willing to lose everything that he has, even heaven, even spiritual things, without thinking about it. Maybe you don't see this by every Jew, but that's the Jewish soul. The thing, what do we have to separate the Jews from the non-Jews? Not in the soul, in the body. The Jew, l'chiora, his body is the same, and that's the big deal. That's what Haman said. I remember once, let's see this. There was somebody in Israel, some professor or something, and he said, our Zionism is based on how do you say, making Jews normal. And those Jews that put on different clothes or beard, that's an aberration. That's weird. And that's the reason everybody hates us, because we look different. So that's what this person said. It was an artist or something like that. And he said, it was a big thing, right? All those religious Jews, they're the weirdos. They're the not normal. That's not Judaism. And that's why everybody hates us, because these people look different. So someone went into all of the Nazi newspapers, the Stürmer, from 1933, something like that. And it showed that all of the anti-Semitic cartoons were all pictures of non-religious Jews. All of them were non-religious. None of them had a kippah or a beard. They all had like long noses and they were fat or whatever it is. And that was one of the big things of the Nazis, that the Jews, they're like a cancer. They look like everybody else. They act like everybody else, but they're really not. They're really not. They're this sort of disease that looks like all the other cells, but it really isn't. In other words, the fact that the Jews look exactly like everybody else, that was a reason to hate them. That's why they hated them, because they look like everybody else, but we know that they're not. So what do you mean you know that they're not? What exactly do they do that you know that they're not? Says, don't worry. The fact is that they're different. That's all. And they try to hide it by looking like everybody else. So that's what the Rebbe is saying. In the fact that the Jews look like everybody else, that's really where their Judaism sticks out. How so? We'll see. We'll see. And that's why Haman hated them. That's a reason to hate somebody, because they look like you. We'll see. Them kumen them osis from bewezen. So therefore, these signs that the Jewish people have, Torah and holidays and circumcision and the commandments, the tefillin, they come to show as oich the gashmis that even the physical body of a Jew is really different from the non-Jews. The Yiddish guf, that the Jewish body is holy. Is holy. That's the opposite message of Zionism. Right? Zionism wanted to say that because the Jewish body is like everybody else, so if we just drop this whole religion thing, then everybody's going to like us. And the fact of the matter is, now we see now they got an additional reason to hate us. Not only the Jews, we don't hate Jews, we hate Zionists, right? Because the Jewish body is different. How can we see that? We'll see. And even though that these signs come, and that's what Purim showed. Because these signs come, and they bezeichen, and they single out the holiness of the Jewish body. Therefore, Zion and Oich Zei Azelch, they have to be such signs, which externally, superficially, Zion and Zei Faran Oich, they also exist by the non-Jews, but they're used in a totally different way. The non-Jews use them, and for whatever their purposes are, for themselves, and the Jewish people use these very signs, Torah, holidays, Torah, holidays, circumcision, and the commandments for holiness, not just for themselves. We'll see. That's, by the way, is the whole thing of the land of Israel. The argument of the land of Israel, the insanity of saying that the land of Israel could belong to anybody else. Because the land of Israel is holy. It's a holy land. It looks like every other land, but it's not. It's a holy land. It's only relevant to the Jewish people, that the Jewish people are a holy nation. What does it mean, holy? We'll see. Von deswegen, nevertheless, Zion and Zayidin and ganzen anders, even though the Jews look the same, they act the same, but in fact, the Jewish bodies are totally different. Thus, these signs show that the physical the physical activities which are connected with the Jewish body, even though the Zelba Pulas, the same things are done also by the non-Jews. A Jew eats, a Jew sleeps, a Jew sleeps, a non-Jew sleeps, a Jew eats, a non-Jew eats, a Jew sleeps, a non-Jew eats. A Jew has a house, is handled, he has a business, right? The non-Jews also have these things. But by Yidden, by a Jew, is thus Gor Andish is totally different. By Yidden, by Jews, Zayin Oich, the Gashmis, the physical things are holy. Like it says, B'chol Dorachecha Da'eu, in all of your ways, you should know him in everything you do. It's a sentence in Proverbs, Mishlei. As a Jew knows God even in his business, even how he eats, he goes to sleep, he puts on his shoes. Everything is godly. While because nit blows not only farmog a yid, a Jewish yid, kedusha in zich, not only does a Jewish person have holiness in himself, via tzuga v'zach, I'm sorry. The holiness is not by a Jew, just an additional thing to Zayin Mahus, to his being, but his essence, being the essential definition and of what a Jew is holiness. Und the Rebbe is demanded from a Jew that all of the things which a Jew does should also be holy. So a Jew, you can't escape it. That's a Jew's identity. It's like a horse can't stop being a horse, and a human being can't stop being a human being. Even a talking horse, it's a horse that talks, a human being that thinks he's a horse. So they put him in a mental institution for people, not for horses. A person is a person. Right? You can't change it. A Jew is a Jew. You can't change it. Oivdem on this says the Gemara, and what is this difference? We'll see. The Gemara says that light, that's the Torah. Fregdem Torah, it says, we can ask a question. Torah, Vert Alamo angerufen mit Nomen. The Torah is always called by the name of light. Why is the Torah always called light? Right, the Torah or. Why in the Megillah is the Torah called Ora, light, feminine? This is feminine. In Hebrew, there's masculine and feminine. The Torah is always Or. Ora means the Torah, how it receives. What is it? What's a different type of Torah? What's this? As Anfert the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, says that this is talking about Torah Shebal Peh. This is talking about the Talmud. Which the Talmud, this receives from the written Torah. Just like the mother receives the seed from the father. The seed from the father is very, very small, like a seed. You plant a seed in the ground, you can't see any fruits, any trees, any flowers. It's the seed. The same thing with the Torah. The Torah, the 5 books of Moses, it's just like seed. It's a seed. And where is it planted? It's planted in the hearts and the minds of the great rabbis, that they explain what it means. That's what it gives birth to the truth, which is written in the Torah Shebal Peh. It's in the what's called the oral Torah. That's feminine. The difference between the written Torah, which is masculine, and the oral Torah, the Talmud, which is feminine, is Torah Shebachtav. The written Torah is higher in intellect. Is hecher from an inyan from seichel. The written Torah is higher than intellect. I put these classes up, so sometimes people write to me things, and they write to me, non-Jews. So they make up their own explanations of what it says in the Torah. They make up their own explanations. How can you tell me this when it says clearly this? It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that you have to put on tefillin. It says totafot. So everybody can make up whatever they want to. You have to put totafot between your eyes. So it says the Torah, the fact is that the written Torah is higher than intellect. That's like the seed that comes from the father. You can't tell if the child is going to be smart, it's going to be what. And everybody knows that the written Torah comes from God. And it came to Moses on the Mount Sinai. Selbstverständlich, as it's self-understood, as their Zugav, that the way of the written Torah is not with that. Your attitude should not be with intellect. And I say chakiros, pilpulim, but only with faith. Right? There's some of these non-religious professors, or I don't know what they are, and they say you can see that there were 4 or 5 different authors to the Torah. Why? Because in the story of Bereshit, so first of all it says the name Elohim, and then it says Hashem Elohim, and then after that it says Hashem. So you can see there's these different authors. You don't learn the Torah that way. The Torah has to be learned with faith. This is God's words. These are not the words of the great rabbis or of Moses. That's the written Torah. And that's the masculine aspect that comes from above to below. But the oral Torah, that's called Ora, the Jews had Ora, V'simcha, the oral Torah, its thing is explaining with intellect, bringing into intellect and using logic to explain what the short words of the Torah are. And also for Oyser to learn laws which come from the written Torah. Right? 10 Commandments, the written Torah. It says, keep the day of Shabbat. Which day is Shabbat? What are you supposed to keep? What are you supposed to do? Right? 6 days God created the world, and on the 7th day God rested. So you should also rest. What am I supposed to rest? I'm not supposed to create anything. I can't create anything anyway. What exactly is the Torah? Nothing is clearly written in the Torah. Everything in the Torah is written shorthand, like the seed from the father. And the great holy rabbis of the Talmud, which most of them had the power to raise the dead, they're the ones that explain the Torah in a way that we can understand it. That the rabbis of the Talmud, they compare one word to another, and they bring also in intellect as vibal, because the written Torah is written such a way, written Torah, it's godly, therefore verstandig, it's understood as oichban under another person darf sein der selber din. They learn in the Talmud. If you learn, non-Jews are not supposed to learn the Talmud. But what is the Talmud? The Talmud is 90% arguments. Now, this one says this, one says this, the arguments, and it says all the opinions are correct. but not all of them come into law. And so they do things according to law. There are some laws which they just say that's just a law from Moses on Mount Sinai. They don't argue about it. But all the rest are given to arguments. So it comes out that the oral Torah, the Talmud, this is similar to non-Jews. It should be for the non-Jews as well. Why not? The written Torah, that we can say clearly that that's Jewish. That's from God himself. We say it's holy. But the oral Torah, that's not holy. That's just the intellect. You can just is an Indian. This is a thing which given gavoren suseichel. The Talmud is given to human understanding. Von deswegen, and nevertheless, is the Zugang, the way of Jews to the oral Torah, to the Talmud, is with the same faith as it is with the written Torah. Men paskin, and we don't say that the laws come because of our intellect or because of the intellect of Rabbi Akiva or the intellect of Hillel or Shammai, whatever. Afilu ven as zayin, and even when they use their intellect in order to come to the conclusions, but it's not intellect that decides what it is. The reason that they came to such a conclusion is because that's what God wants. I don't know. Okay, let's see. Okay, Ken Mentine, your person can say, "Seteicht volt sich es gehandelt wegen an Indian from Torah shebechtav." You can think that if holiness, that's in the written Torah. But as soon as you're connected to intellect, as vibalt aber as the Torah shebechtav, because the written Torah is not written exactly, is therefore, but therefore we have the oral Torah to explain it. Was is Ibr gegeben gavoren zum seichel, which that's intellect. And the poskim and the people that decide the laws, that they decide these laws from a previous generation. So they said one thing, but they said it because they understood things well, according to their mind. Says that the answer is not so. As their Zugang, that the approach that Jews have to have to the entire Torah, whether the written Torah or the Talmud, has to be faith and fear of God. It says if you have more fear of God than you have wisdom, then your wisdom will remain. So if so, we see that the Talmud, which seems to be normal, it's a normal book, but the Jewish people don't treat it normal. That's what it says. The Jewish people had aura, that the Talmud by the Jewish people, this is godly, this is holy. This is given the Unterschied. This is the difference between the Tzedukim and the Purushim. The Purushim are the people which are disparagingly called, in the Gospels, this began, the hatred of the rabbis. They're called the Pharisees, the Pharisees, the evil Pharisees. Even if you look up in Webster's dictionary, a pharisaical statement, or pharisaical is a person who's deceitful. The Pharisees have become known with deceit. Why? Because according to the Gospels, the rabbis of the Talmud, they're trickers, they're liars. They're trying to keep the truth from us. How can they say a thing like that? How can they say something like that? Why? Because it's logic. They use logic. And logic, you can ask questions on. And who says that their logic is better than my logic? It says that's the difference between the Tzedukim. The Gospels weren't the first ones to get this idea. There were the people called the Tzedukim. There were always groups that went against the explanation of the Torah. They said every word of the written Torah is true, but they don't know how to explain it. Says the Jewish people say the explanations given by the rabbis in the Talmud, that is as holy as the Torah itself. That's the difference. There was a group called the Tzedukim. The Tzedukim said that every word of the Torah, we have to interpret how we understand it, because that's given to our understanding. Okay, that's the Torah. And thus, and this comes the oral Torah, the Torah, that's the Orah, feminine, that's the sign which signifies, separates the Jews between the non-Jews. Even in the oral Torah, even in the Talmud, which is intellect, A Jew does it only because God says, not because our intellect says. It's not our book, it's God's book, totally 100%. And even the words of the Talmud, we're not going to go against the words of the Talmud. Okay, the same thing is, and even the Talmud is above understanding. I'm sorry, we have to skip a little bit because it's the Rebbe explains it beautifully, but okay. Faith. That's the same thing is, the Zelba, the same thing is also when it says, Ora is the oral Torah, the Talmud, and that differentiates between the Jews and the non-Jews, even though the Jews have intellect and the non-Jews have intellect, and the non-Jews can also explain the Torah according to their intellect, but their intellect is not godly, and the intellect of the Talmud is godly. And the rabbis of the Talmud, we believe in them just like we believe in God himself. Okay, the same thing is also true with the holidays. Simcha, the Yom Tov, is like we said before, that also the non-Jews, they also have their holidays. But by Jews, the holidays are holy. When it comes to a joy of a holiday, is Kleitman Zichzuzam, the Jewish people get together and you're happy. You eat meat, you drink wine. These are not spiritual things. But we can see the difference between the Jews and the non-Jews. By non-Jews bring the Zachen, it brings to how do you say, wildness. New Year's party, huh? New Year's party. Famous New Year's parties, the company New Year's party, right? The lights go out. How do you say, what goes into the New Year's party stays in the New Year's party. Over by Yidden, by the Jews, their Yom Tov, the holiday, is totally different. They're also happy and they drink, but what this doesn't bring to, how do you say, wildness, to, how do you say, debauchery. Nor Adarab, exactly the opposite. Thus brings zich to men more fear of God. Unafilu by Simchas Purim, even by the joy of Purim, which is that it's a mitzvah to get drunk until you don't know the difference between good and bad. As it says, you're supposed to get so drunk, intellectually you don't know the difference. Is the simcha, the joy, adds only in the fear of God. That you're supposed to get so drunk that intellectually you don't know the difference between good and bad, but intrinsically, essentially, you know the difference. And also when the Jew is the level of he doesn't know intellectually the difference between good and bad, right? It says between Haman and Mordechai, that or Haman and Baruch Mordechai, nevertheless, it's a holy day for him. He remains himself in a holy way. The Zelba, the same thing is also, I personally have never heard of a story. I've never heard of it. I mean, I've been religious already, 55 years, and people get really drunk, especially in Chabad. They get really drunk. I have never heard, I mean, there must be somewhere. I'm sure that there is. But I personally have never heard of like a fight breaking out or, some sort of a not, modest thing happening, some sort of a decadence occurring, God forbid. I never heard of it on Purim. And everybody's drunk totally out of it, right, on Purim. Somehow or other wakes up this Jewish happiness. The Zelba saying the same thing. You can see the songs for Purim. The songs for even in Israel, they have these songs, non-religious songs for Purim, right? None of them are talking about, the nasty things, whatever. Purim is a holiday, a happy holiday. Well, it's the same thing by circumcision. By all the non-Jews, they also have circumcision, but their circumcision that they do, it brings a proof. It says, it says that the story that King David was once in the mikveh. And he said, while I'm in the mikveh, you're not supposed to say words of Torah. And also you can't do any commandments in the mikveh. So King David said, whoa, 1 second, I'm naked. I don't have any commandments. I don't need commandments. And all of a sudden, David, you remember, no, I'm circumcised. I'm circumcised. Says from that, she says, though I do have a commandment. From this, we say two things. Number one, that a Jewish person, the circumcision should make you especially happy. And number two, that the circumcision Nemt zu asach roib from a sonnet. 1 second. Just 1 second. 1 minute. 1 minute. Is yeah, give me 1 second. 1 second. I just want to look something up. Just give me a second. 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute. Excuse me. There it is. I see. Riches. Okay. It says there's a sentence that says, Sus Anochi is a sentence in Psalms. Sus Anochi Alim Rosecha Kamotze Shalorav. It's in Psalm 119. Sus Anochi Alim Rosecha Kamotze Shalorav. He remembered, it says, I am happy with your commandments like one who finds great spoils of war. Spoils. Shalal is you take spoils of war. So we see that, first of all, it makes you happy. Circumcision is happy. And secondly, we see somehow or other that circumcision is the reward for it is you get some sort of spoils of war. You take from your enemies their power. Remember, what is the great happiness, especially by the circumcision? Why? And why does it take the spoils of war from our enemies? Why? This you can understand with the fact that the Maimonides says that when a Jew circumcises his children or himself, that it takes away some of the pleasure of the sexual act. It takes away some of the pleasures of this world. The world has a lot of pleasures, and the world can rule over us because of the pleasures. That's called klippa. Klippa means that the world seems to have all the answers. The external world, and don't get into things. Who's the creator of the world? Is the reason for the world? The world provides pleasure. You can just stay externally. That's called klippa, shells. Was is their grester sona? That's the biggest enemy of the Jewish people. How do you say that the enticement that the world entices us, steal, lie. When a Jewish people weakens his desires and his connection to the world, and you should be in the world is good, but the world doesn't provide for you your main pleasure in life. And even more, it nemts all of our gegening from olam hazeh unutztem. A Jew takes all of the things of the world and he uses it for what God wants, not for he wants. Like it's called chelev laHashem. All fats go to God. The best should go to God. So therefore, usually a person wants the best for himself. That's the whole idea of circumcision. Circumcision, it says it takes away your pleasure from the world and devotes that pleasure to the creator of the world, who's creating the world right now. And this is the difference between the Jewish people and the non-Jewish people. Non-Jewish people, that the circumcision of the Jewish people, he does it only for what God wants. And because he's doing this for what God wants, not for health purposes, because it's beneficial for him. Exactly the opposite. It makes the person, it takes away from that person's ego, selfishness, pleasure in the world, what I'm going to receive. And the whole thing of circumcision is that it's showing that I am connecting myself to the creator of the world and not to the world. That's the greatest happiness there can be. And the Rebbe explains that's the same thing with tefillin, putting on tefillin. A non-Jew maybe puts on these signs in order to signify that he's part of a big group. And that gives him a power that he's part of this group. But tefillin signify that we are part of the creator. Our mind and our heart are connected to the creator. I'm sorry we have to skip a little bit, but it's getting late. Especially because what are tefillin made of? It really makes no sense. Tefillin are made from an animal skin. So you take an animal, a cow, and this cow, usually you throw away the skin. What do you need the skin for? You take the skin of the animal and you make from it the parchments of the tefillin and the boxes of the tefillin, and you use this animal in order to serve God. The animal suddenly becomes holy. An animal hasn't got any intellect or whatever, but because the tefillin are because in the tefillin is written, but because in the tefillin is written, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's one of the four parchments of that's written. What's written inside of the tefillin? 4 paragraphs, and those are the 4 paragraphs where the commandment of tefillin appears in the Torah. And that's but one of them is Shema Yisrael. Understand, Jews, that God is our God and God is one. So that by means of this, you unite not your mind and your heart with what is written there, namely the commandment of the king. So you use the physical world in order to serve the creator of the world. And that is what makes a Jew really happy. And that's what Haman wanted to destroy. I'm sorry, we're skipping this. Maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll even go over this on Sunday. Says that's the big happiness when Haman could not bear that the Jewish people were making from the physical world a holy thing, from human intellect a holy thing, even from the sexual act a holy thing, circumcision. That he couldn't take that. He wanted the world to be our world. People do with the world what they want to, be normal. That was, by the way, also the whole basis of French philosophy, the way the first Rebbe of Chabad said that France is our biggest enemy, because the France wanted to say the world is here for you to enjoy. It's for you to enjoy. Everybody's going to be equal, and the world is here. And the Jewish people said, no, the world is here in order to show that there's a creator and to do with the world what the creator wants. And those are these 4 things. They're worldly things, natural things, to show that a Jew is essentially totally different from a non-Jew, not only his soul, but also in the body. Therefore, the Jewish people are here to change nature into above nature to show. That's the big holiday of Purim. That's why the holiday of Purim is so happy, because everything in the world is announcing that it is a big miracle, a happy. And that's why a person should get drunk on Purim until he doesn't know the difference between, let's see. That's why it says, and that's why you have a physical meal and you eat and you drink. And you're supposed to get drunk until you don't know. And even at the time, even though you don't know, by a Jew, he, in the essence of his soul, he feels that Haman is bad, cursed, and Mordechai is blessed. Evil, the fact that Haman is cursed, is become up, is totally out of the question. We don't want any connection. And all the ideas of good, from the essence of our soul, we know that that's where we're headed to. Warum? Because the Baal design for the connection of a Jew between God is not anything that's additional to his being. A Jew puts on tefillin not because he's religious, because he's a Jew. A Jew keeps the holidays not because he's religious or he wants to have a good time, because he's a Jew. The same thing as learning Torah, even the oral Torah, the logic of the Torah. You're not doing it because it's a great intellect, because you're a Jew. And a Jew is connected to the essence of God. Nor thus is the Ganzen Mahus, this is the whole essence being of what a Jew is. Therefore, their heritage, he feels, not just because that he knows intellectually about God, even when he's lone noda, even when his mind is drunk, his mind doesn't work, but his very essence of a Jew. He knows that Haman is bad, selfishness is bad, essentially doesn't want anything to do with it. And Mordechai is essentially good. Mordechai is at the essence of the soul of every single Jew. And so it is also Moshiach, and so it is also the Rebbe, is at the essence of the soul of every single Jew. And that's the whole holiday of Purim, and that's the whole happiness of Purim. Okay, now let's do the Yom Yom.